Nineveh, and so a Chaldean rebel brought the lands of Mesopotamia under his rule. After Nabopolassar's death, power passed to his son, Nebuchadnezzar II. He continued his father's work and became the one who led Babylon to a new golden age. Nebuchadnezzar II was born around 630 BCE. At roughly the same time in ancient Greece, the future poetess Sappho and the future founder of democracy Solon were born. They were all nearly the same age. Nebuchadnezzar's name in Akkadian sounded like Nabu Kuduri Usur, meaning Nabu, protect my firstborn. The god Nabu in Akkadian mythology was considered the patron of wisdom. Nebuchadnezzar II inherited an empire that already stretched across all of Mesopotamia, yet he continued his father's conquests. He pushed its borders even further. The only unconquered rival remaining was Egypt, and this was because the two sides were equal in strength. Under Nebuchadnezzar II, the Neo-Babylonian kingdom experienced its golden age. Tribute from subject cities that had previously flowed to Nineveh was now directed to Babylon. Residents of other cities relocated to the capital. Plenty of hired work appeared, and the population grew rapidly. Early in his reign, Nebuchadnezzar decided to restore the ziggurat from the time of Hammurabi. This ziggurat was called Etemenanki, which translates as House of the Foundation of Heaven and Earth, and its construction was overseen by an architect named Arad Aheshu. Once rebuilt, Etemenanki became the tallest structure in Mesopotamia, and later the inspiration for the myth of the Tower of Babel. It was dedicated to Marduk, the supreme god of Babylon. The construction of city walls, canals, and palaces was carried out primarily by hired workers. Their labor was paid for by temple officials, who simultaneously oversaw construction projects in the capital. The funds came from the temple's reserves, which consisted mainly of royal gifts, gold, silver, and war spoils. Captured foreigners provided only supplementary labor. But the grand construction of Babylon did not end there. For his wife Amytis, Nebuchadnezzar built the legendary Hanging Gardens, the second of the 7 wonders of the world. According to legend, Amytis was a Median princess. She was weighed down by dusty, scorching Babylon and longed for her homeland, the shady forests and high mountains of Media. To ease his wife's sorrow, Nebuchadnezzar ordered the construction of the Hanging Gardens, where she could hide from the bustle and lose herself in memories. In literature, the Hanging Gardens bear the name of the mythical queen Semiramis. The prototype for Semiramis was Shamuramat, a ruler of Assyria who lived 2 centuries before Nebuchadnezzar was born. Perhaps then the second wonder of the world should be called the Hanging Gardens of Amytis. And yet, to this day, it remains unknown whether the Hanging Gardens actually existed. Not a single Babylonian text from Nebuchadnezzar's time mentions them. Everything we know comes from Greek and Roman authors writing centuries later. This is the only one of the 7 wonders of the world whose very existence remains in question. But even if the Hanging Gardens are merely a beautiful legend, what Nebuchadnezzar built around Babylon was absolutely real and arguably far more impressive. Nebuchadnezzar erected a double wall around the city with a combined thickness of about 90 feet. That is the width of a 4-lane highway. Chariots drawn by teams of 4 horses could race along the top of these walls and still have room to turn around. For comparison, the Great Wall of China is 15 to 30 feet wide. Babylon's walls were 3 to 6 times wider. It calls to mind the walls from Attack on Titan. The city itself covered roughly 2,200 acres, roughly comparable to downtown Chicago. Its population, by various estimates, reached 200,000. Does that not sound so impressive? Then here is some context. In those same years, Athens had about 90,000 inhabitants, and Rome was still a village. Babylon most likely became the first city in human history to cross the 200,000 mark. Now the Ishtar Gate. This was the main entrance to the city, and it was designed so that anyone approaching it would have the breath taken right out of them. The gate rose 50 feet above the ground, while its foundation extended another 46 feet below. The total height of the structure was 95 feet, the height of a 9-story building. But it was not just the height that was staggering. The entire facade of the gate was covered in glazed bricks of vivid cobalt blue. This was not paint. It was a thin, vitreous layer that gleamed in the sun so intensely that from a distance the gate appeared to be carved from lapis lazuli, the most precious blue stone of antiquity. Nothing like it existed anywhere else in the world. Against the blue background were laid out figures, 575 Mushushu dragons, and bulls arranged in 13 rows. Each figure was assembled from individually molded bricks like a mosaic. Now imagine you have passed through the Ishtar Gate and found yourself on the processional way. It stretched for over half a mile, up to 65 feet wide, wider than Broadway in New York. On both sides rose walls 50 feet high, adorned with 120 life-sized glazed lions. Each lion was about 6.5 feet long, assembled from 46 individual bricks. And here is a detail that shows just how deliberate all this construction was. The lions on the eastern wall stepped forward with their left paw, while those on the western wall led with their right. If you walked along the road toward the gate, it seemed as though 2 columns of lions were bearing down on you from both sides. The history of the Neo-Babylonian kingdom did not last long, roughly 1 century. The reign of Nebuchadnezzar II coincided with the rise and prosperity of Babylon, while a swift decline began immediately after his death. As early as 539 BCE, the Persian king Cyrus II conquered Babylon. From there, Persian power only grew. Key territories were stripped from Babylon, though the city itself retained self-governance for several more decades. Everything changed in 481 BCE. The Babylonians raised a revolt against the Persians, but the Persian king Xerxes crushed the uprising and devastated Babylon. As a final symbolic gesture, the Persians carried away the statue of Marduk, and so the divine protector of Babylon departed his city. The once reborn capital began its long descent into twilight. And now, the most important part. Remember the paradox we started with? Babylon became a legend and turned to ruins before it was even founded. Now, you know how that is possible. The Babylon of Hammurabi, that same celebrated legendary Babylon, was destroyed by Sennacherib and drowned beneath the waters. It is gone. The ruins that archaeologists unearthed, the ones that stand today in the Iraqi desert, those belong to a different Babylon, built by Nebuchadnezzar on the site of the one that was destroyed. The legend was born before the stones that remain from it. We know Babylon by its second life, but we remember it for its first.